Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 New Hampshire Agricultural Policy Forum. My name is Roanne Tasoulis, and I am the director of the Monadnock Farm and Community Coalition. We've been organizing this event for the last 8 years. 4 years ago, we invited our natural partner, the New Hampshire Food Alliance, to partner with us to bring this important event to you all, as they are leaders in New Hampshire to connect all the stakeholders across all of the regions to come together and create a very viable, robust New Hampshire local food system. So we want to know who's here. And to that end, please put your name and affiliation in the chat. We're so happy to have you today. This year, we're very delighted to have the expertise of the Carsey School of Public Policy at UNH as a co-organizer on this year's event. As a matter of fact, this event is the featured guest speaker of their monthly discussion series, Coffee and Conversations. It just made sense that we invite them into the fold as we work to strengthen our voice in Concord and help New Hampshire legislators and agencies better understand the connection between agriculture, community health and resilience, economic development, and climate change. So UC Terrell from Carsey School will be facilitating our conversation this morning. UC joined Carsey in 2010 as founding executive director of what has become the school's Center for Impact Finance. She currently oversees the center's training programs for community lenders, green banks, and impact investors to finance climate-friendly projects in low-income and historically marginalized communities. And I will turn it over to her very capable hands. UC.
Thank you so much, Roanne. It really is testament to the vision of you and, excuse me, the Monadnock Farm and Community Coalition 8 years ago to bring together this range of perspectives on the food systems towards New Hampshire's shared prosperity. The forum is an important part now of the state's infrastructure that breaks down disciplinary and regional silos to share information and, where possible, align messages across the system, and as you noted, in Concord. It's a real honor for Carsey School to join you and the Food Alliance and our fabulous speakers on the eve of New Hampshire's 2024 legislative session. There are some exciting ideas making their way through towards legislative consideration and public hearings, though, as we all know, the devil is in the details. I read yesterday about the United Nations Climate Summit that, quote, for the first time, there is broad acknowledgement that the food agenda is aligned with the climate fight across the board, and posing the question, how do we feed ourselves without further damaging the planet or worsening rising levels of hunger? New Hampshire has been coping with these questions for many years as well. In Carsey's monthly discussion series, we bring together people, place, policy, and impact in the Granite State. As always, we thank our series partners, the New Hampshire Bureau of Education and Training and the New Hampshire Association of Certified Public Managers. Unlike our regular series, we won't have time after the speakers for rich discussion, but I encourage you to put your questions into the chat, and our speakers know to monitor that and to respond as their area of expertise matches your questions. Also, for those of you who have joined a few minutes late, please do put your name and affiliation in the chat. I see a few folks who are regulars on our call already, but it also occurs to me, and Roanne had mentioned, that some folks might not know the Carsey School of Public Policy. So I figured I'd give you a quick background and overview of our food and agriculture related programs to date. The Carsey School is involved in research, engagement, and applied education across a number of fields. In our applied research area, you can see the topics that our social policy and practice arm has gone into over the past years. As a very specific example, we just completed the needs assessment for the Cooperative Extension's Carroll County Food Access Network. And I encourage those of you who are interested to check out our Carsey briefs online, which are bite-sized, action-oriented compilations of scholarly research, but packaged in a way that's applicable to our policymakers and to those who are active in these topics. For example, a recent brief showed that more than 80% of Granite Staters report buying local farm food, at least a few times a month in the past year. And it also looks into the reasons for the significant variation engagement across the state. So check those out. Carsey's New Hampshire Listens program is our community engagement arm, and many of you know that the state received EPA funding to update its climate plans. New Hampshire Listens is running a series of community engagement sessions across the state in partnership with, excuse me, with New Hampshire DES. And there'll be opportunities to participate in this first stage of input before February that Rob Warner will speak further about. Carsey School also offers 4 master's programs in public policy, public administration, community development, and in global conflict and human security. There are a range of campus and online programs, and across all programs, there's a focus on sustainable development, including things like farming, food security, and responsible consumption and production. Our professional trainings also strengthen the community finance ecosystem, which I know is a big element to many in our farm and agriculture systems. We have a USDA funded grant to help lenders, so community credit unions and other financial institutions, to learn about small scale independent meat and poultry processors and an increasingly consolidated industry, so that they can make loans on favorable terms to this particular category of meat and poultry processors, which maps well onto New Hampshire's ecosystem and distributed industry. In today's session, we'll be looking across different perspectives on the food and agricultural ecosystem. And to start us off, we're going to have a success story, which we are so delighted to have Commissioner Shawn Jasper, who many of you know comes from an agricultural poultry background and spent many years in the legislature himself, so is ideally suited to talk about our agricultural land preservation program. And Jeremy Lougee from the Southeast Land Trust of New Hampshire, SALT, will be following the Commissioner to talk about some of the details behind this program. Commissioner?
Good morning. It's great to see so many people participating in this. I'm amazed to see we're at 92 people right now. That's really fantastic. So my passion for land preservation goes way back. I live in southern New Hampshire, and my whole life I've watched some of the best agricultural land in the country be swallowed up for developments. And I've always thought, you know, at some point in history where this generation will be looked back at as probably some of the dumbest people that ever inhabited the planet when it comes to protecting our most important asset, which is the land on which we can grow food. And I've been aware that for probably better than 50 years, this country is losing about 1 million acres of farmland a year, and that's added up pretty substantially. I just saw an article earlier this week that said, looking forward, we need to add in the world, we need to add about 20 million acres of farmland to keep up with the projections. And obviously, we're still moving in the wrong direction. So I actually started as a selectman in Hudson. We preserved 50 acres of farmland from a founding family in town, and the voters supported doing that. And I was quite proud of that. That land is now passed out of that family, but is still in production to some degree. So pleased about that. When I became commissioner, started really looking at things, I realized we had a program. We hold easements on about 84 acres, 84 parcels around the state, encompassing thousands of acres. But since LCHIP came along, we hadn't done anything. And the state of New Hampshire hasn't put any money, general fund money, into ag land preservation. While we do add land through a lot of other programs, the state really didn't have any direct skin in the game. And so I thought it was important for that to happen. So I did make a request, and we were able to add money to the budget. There's about 750,000 right now in our account. Now, things never are quite as simple as you think they're going to be, particularly when it comes to government. So soon realized that in order to do what I wanted to do, which was access federal funds and essentially at least double the money that we had, we were going to need to make some changes to the law. That took some more time. And thankfully, a great team came together to help me with that. And many of them, including Jeremy, are on the call today. I couldn't have done what we've been able to do without their help. So now we're just about ready to really launch the program. The last piece of it that we're looking for really is to have the new representative from the land trusts brought forward so that we can have the governor nominate that individual, or nominate the individual, and then they'll have to be approved by the governor's council. But we're very close to that, and I look forward to us moving forward and continuing to add money in future budgets. And given some of the other things that we're doing, I think I can do that without impacting our total budget, because there are some things that probably are funded to a degree that we'll be able to cut back at a little bit. This is something that I am very passionate about, and look forward to being able to turn this into a successful program once again. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'll pick up the story from there. So as most of you know, New Hampshire continues to lose farmland rapidly, somewhere to the tune of about 800 acres a year. Conservation easements are one tool that help farmers, land trusts like our own and others maintain our very limited agricultural land here in the state. So this agricultural land preservation program is New Hampshire's original conservation funding program. Like the commissioner said, came long before LCHIP, started around 1980, and it gave, thank you, it gave the Department of Agriculture the ability to conserve important farmland across the state. So thanks to Commissioner Jasper, who's long been a champion of farmland protection, he recognized that we're leaving a lot of federal money on the table from the U.S. Department of Agriculture through the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And he managed to rebudget some funding to the program a few years back. But it happened right around the time of COVID, and due to the capacity of the department and the challenges of administering and managing the program, the funds had essentially sat dormant there, unused. So after conversations with the commissioner, we realized that if we were going to get this program off the ground, we needed to tweak it slightly so that there'd be a slightly more efficient way to get this money on the ground and working to protect the farmland. So fortunately, land trusts already accessing a lot of federal, state, and private funding to secure conservation easements on farmland. So using these ALP funds to leverage or match these other funding sources would just be another way to get more of this work done. The state can still hold that right of enforcement on the ALP easements and could oversee the distribution of the funds to the land trust, but they wouldn't have to spend their limited time and resources and capacity managing the program. So by transitioning that duty over to the land trust, it's essentially a win-win-win for the department, the land trust, and farmers across the state. And I would argue for all the people in the state, because we're going to be able to protect more of the very limited farmland we have here. So a little bit about what our group did to help and how we came together. So the New Hampshire Food Alliance, led by Nicole Cardwell, pulled together our support team to help the commissioner. The group included myself, American Farmland Trust, New Hampshire Land Trust Coalition, and other organizations with expertise in farmland conservation. We came together and identified some of the statutory changes that needed to be made to RSA 432, which is the enabling statute for the ALP program, for two reasons. Number one, we wanted land trusts to be able to utilize these ALP funds to be able to purchase conservation easements while still allowing the state to hold that right of enforcement, which they've always held. We also wanted to make sure that these ALP funds would be eligible to match the U.S. Department of Agriculture's agricultural land easement program specifically, but we also wanted to know that they'd be able to leverage other funding sources as well. Essentially, as the commissioner said, doubling the impact of the program. So the success story essentially is that together we're able to change a state policy and the way it worked for everyone involved. I think some of the lessons here, number one, we had leadership on our side. The commissioner really started this by refunding the program years ago. He knew that we really needed to match these federal funds, not leave them on the table unused. So he really made things happen initially by rebudgeting those funds into the program. Number two, we had really strong coordination between a group of people that were all motivated to see this succeed. And, you know, when combined, when we're all in the room together, we had all the expertise we needed at the table. Nicole and the Food Alliance team kept us really organized, kept asking questions, kept us moving forward. And in my mind, which is most important, kept the messaging and communications really simple, because I'm a project manager. I know how to work with the federal funding. I do it. It's very complicated, but I've done enough projects. I can do it with my eyes closed, but I have no way of communicating that, sitting before the legislature and a workshop with a committee. So having the Food Alliance there, sort of working with the messaging, keeping us all in line and working on communicating that was really important. And finally, we had a real legislative champion in Representative Peter Bixby of Dover. He introduced the legislation to change the enabling statute. Then he stayed in touch with our team so that we knew what was happening and what he needed to make the case, when he needed it. And then we just did it. We showed up at the committee meetings. We made handouts explaining the program. It required a lot of persistence and follow through, but ultimately we got through it. So I think it is a success story, but it's not quite over. There's still a lot more left to do. The money now needs to be spent. We have an effective vehicle to get these funds out to land trusts. We are most certainly going to use that funding to protect more farmland. And the next step is going to be to roll that out and show its impact, and hopefully continue the program and maybe even increase the funding in the future. There's going to be a lot more federal funding coming down the pike, and hopefully we don't leave any more of it on the table. So keep your eyes open for more information about the ALP program in the weeks and months to come. UC,
Thank you so much, Jeremy. And you'll be staying on to answer any questions that folks have. Again, if there are questions you have during the session for any of our speakers, plug them in the chat and we'll respond in the chat instead of through rich discussion, because we don't have the time today. And thank you. The ALP program is so inspiring. This example of perseverance and collaboration and savvy program design just really coming together from a wide range of players. Now we're going to take a peek into 2024. You'll hear mentions of LSRs, legislative service requests, which are precursors to bills with text and budgetary implications. The bills flesh out the budgetary implications. Some of the details on the LSRs are still unknown, but we wanted to let you know the broad shapes on the horizon, and especially to connect you with the organizations and people who will be tracking and giving input to these in the months ahead. So again, our speakers here, beyond the content of what they share today, are your statewide resources, and I encourage you to follow up with them directly. We have such a great group of experts from the New Hampshire Farm Bureau, Bureau, from NOFA, Farm to School, New Hampshire Hunger Solutions, and the League of Conservation Voters. You've heard enough from me, so I'll ask the speakers to quickly introduce themselves at the start of their presentations. And without further ado, Rob Johnson from the New Hampshire Farm Bureau Federation.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Rob Johnson with the New Hampshire Farm Bureau. And in a nutshell, Farm Bureau is a federation of New Hampshire's 10 county Farm Bureau organizations representing nearly 2,000 New Hampshire farm families and businesses. And I'm going to talk about 4 priority areas, legislative areas that we're going to be looking at in this coming session. The first area is relative to farmers markets. There are 3 pieces of legislation that have been introduced. 2 are in bill form, and the third is still in LSR. But I put on the screen for you all to see the current definition of farmers market in the proposed definition in one of the bills. Because I want to highlight that the sponsor of the bill, it's talked with her a few times, and it's I'll put it there, friendly proposals, and there's not an intent to harm the markets in any way, but we do have a concern with the definition, with the integrity of the definition. You know, there's a consumer protection element for that, for the definition. There's an expectation from consumers when they attend these markets what they're going to find. There's also the markets have a role in determining eligibility for federal nutrition programs provided, like WIC and a senior farmers market program. And there's also an element where it's important that these markets focus on the direct to consumer agricultural marketing. So I'll go to I'll leave it at that, but just something we want you to be aware of, and you'll be hearing more about it, I'm sure. Next slide, please. The next item is relative to the use of drones to apply pesticides, and this is legislation the Farm Bureau has requested, and there's for numerous reasons. There's efficiencies to it. The ability to use also is a benefit to not only to farmers themselves, the environment, but also to as a worker protection safety element to it. And currently in state law, New Hampshire is a little different than most states in that we have a statute that requires what for drones would be a burdensome, onerous, special permitting process that requires a public hearing, which is time consuming, a butter notification, a detailed map to scale, and a justification why other means aren't being used, and if it's deemed to be in the application is deemed to be in what is a residential area, which is not clearly defined. There's further requirements, and so the purpose of this is to enable our farmers to use the latest in technology. And just to be clear, anybody that's using a drone needs to have a pilot's license, and also to apply pesticides, you need to be permitted to do it. In nearly all cases, I think it's not the farmers that would be utilizing the service, because most do not have the pilot's license, that they would be contracting the service to do it, and there'd be experts behind it. It's regularly done in other larger ag states. I know that some of our farmers, this came to us because we had farmers that went to the services in Pennsylvania and New York to see if they would come out here to do it. So that's why we have requested this legislation. Next slide, please. Okay, there's, just to make you aware, there are a couple of bills that have been filed to assist with, I think it probably, most of you are aware with the major disasters that our farmers experienced earlier this year in February with a deep freeze, which really decimated the stone fruit crops, peaches, sweet cherries, and plums. And then in mid-May, there was a severe freeze that really, in some orchards, simply wiped out apple crops, in addition to other crops as well. And UNH Extension has uh, conducted a survey, and we're looking at nearly $10 million in losses to our farmers. So we think this is important to maintain our critical infrastructure in state, and assist our farms in getting through. Again, this was something that the farmers that I've talked with was events that they have never seen. Um, and there's a second bill that I'm just not familiar with that is in the works relative to establishing some type of a farmer assistance fund, but I can't provide you any details with that. But the Senate Bill 348, which is provides some emergency relief, would allocate $8 million to be dispersed by the Department of Agriculture, and gives them quite a bit of leeway in determining how those funds are allocated. And there's a minimum loss requirement at 30%, and a minimum payout that would a maximum payout that would be allocated to those affected. Next slide, please. And then finally, I wanted to touch on, there's one bill that's been filed that specifically is relative to current use assessment. And there's no program in the state that's more important to New Hampshire's working landscape than the current use assessment program. And you'll see in the slide there where I highlighted in bold red the word open space. And our program is a little different than it is in many states. But most all states have a type of a farmland, a forest land assessment program. But ours goes further, and that is open space, whether it's farmland, forest land, recreational land, wildlife habitat, you name it. It deals with open space. And the key is that it enables landowners to hold on to the land and not have to sell it for tax purposes. There's a bill that has been introduced, and it's that would make a change to the program relative to forest land, and it's in response, as I'm sure most of you have heard, there's an entity that has purchased a large parcel of property up in northern New Hampshire, and it's a the name of the entity that purchased Blue Source, which is a joint venture, in a consortium. Part of it's a consortium of investors, and our concern was that we've had bills in the past, is that anytime the current use program should not be utilized or used to accomplish other public policy objectives. Let's keep it simple, and keep it to a mechanism to assess open space for its current use, as opposed to its ad valorem value, which is its highest and best use, like businesses and homes are assessed. My understanding is that I know that the sponsor of the bill has, as folks have been talking with them, and I don't see it moving forward, at least in this session, aggressively. Not as a main focus. There's other bills in the works that don't affect current use that may put are looking at putting maybe a moratorium on land being sold, or land under some type of a carbon credit program that's selling carbon credits. So I will, about out of time. I'll leave it at that. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob. And I encourage everyone to sign up for the Farm Bureau's monthly newsletter for Rob's regular policy updates if you get a chance. Julie.
Second. Hi, thank you. So if you're not familiar with the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New Hampshire, it's a 52-year-old organization that is dedicated to supporting the organic growing community in the state. And we have several sister chapters across the Northeast. So I wanted to touch on a couple of issues today. I want to pick up where Rob left off on the carbon markets and pricing. I'm not going to go into it in great detail because it's too complicated of a subject to do it justice here. But as far as implementing these programs go, the effectiveness and fairness of carbon markets depend on the specific design of market mechanisms, regulatory frameworks, and the inclusion of safeguards for the interest of small-scale farmers and local communities. So policymakers and market designers need to consider these factors to ensure that carbon markets contribute to both environmental sustainability and social equity. And so far, there's not a good track record on it. I'll just point to a global case where in Kenya, the Lougee tribe is being evicted right now due to a carbon credit project there. And meanwhile, here in New Hampshire, the project that Rob just mentioned, Blue Source has purchased the Connecticut Lakes Headwater Working Forest. And as a result, a number of foresters have lost access to lease. And that has been, you know, a working landscape for a while. So we need to consider unintended consequences when we're looking at the legislation and implementing these programs. And I think Rob did a good job of pointing out the potential impact for current use. And we also at NOFA New Hampshire, we just held a webinar. I'd like to point you to that. When you get the slides, you can have the link to it, where we talked about alternative solutions to carbon markets. We have a lot of concerns about them. One specific is land use changes. The other is that offsets really delay the work of tackling the climate crisis. And the offset industry itself sets the standards and certification process, and that can encourage and enable abuse. And as it stands right now, the carbon markets, you know, due to the scrutiny on projects and fraud with them, quite frankly, are under scrutiny, and the prices have dropped dramatically. And so in the webinar we held just last week, we talked about alternative solutions. So I'd like to point you to that. And also an action item alert that we have. It's actually through our Farm Bill policy platform, but you can follow the link, and you can also join our policy working groups as we continue to watch and monitor these issues in the state. And the other thing I'd like to point to, as well as the great work of the Land Care Collaborative, Abe Collins and a number of farmers in Vermont that are working hard to introduce community-led local solutions and alternatives. And a lot of the farmers who are involved in the Payment for Ecosystem project in Vermont cited, you know, the EQIP NRCS programs as being some of the most valuable programs to them. And right now, those IRA funding is under attack. So we want to make sure that we support the programs that are helping our farmers now. So if we can go to the next slide. Great. So, so those of you who are familiar with the organic certification program history, years ago, NOFA was the accredited certifier. I won't go into full story of the history because we don't have enough time here. But in recent years, or for quite some time now, the Department of Ag has been the certifying body. 2 years ago, the scopes for livestock and processing were ceased, and right now we're working with the Department of Ag to address certification for the remaining scopes. So NOFA created, okay, so there's my slide here. Yeah, so what we're working on right now, there are several bills presented. And thank you to Representative Bixby, who's been a huge support in working with NOFA New Hampshire, the Department of Ag, as well as the farmer group, to increase fees for the remaining scopes, which are crop certification, and to continue administering the service. And so the bill, which is, let's see, House Bill 2106, basically covers funding for 1.5 staff, and also increases the certification fees over a period of time so the program is self-sustaining. And the fees haven't been increased in quite some time, so that's the issue. So right now, there are a lot of challenges for the department in administering it. NOFA New Hampshire has been working to provide some alternative routes. The number one concern, or one of the main concerns of the farmers that we are working with to support and amplify their voices in the matter, is that they want to retain the New Hampshire certification seal. That's really important to them when they're selling their produce locally. They want their product to be recognized. If they had to go through a certifier in another state, it would have that state's certification seal and not necessarily. So we are working on a solution in the event that this legislation doesn't pass, that there is a backup so we can continue to do that. But I just wanted to point to the benefits of organic farming to the state. And a lot of the farmers here rely on that certification. They're direct and small diversified farms. And so that's an important marketing tool for our farmers. And organic presents a robust market opportunity for all farmers. The market is growing. And organic farming also increases land value, boosts climate resilience, improves soil health, and reduces input and soil costs. So there's a lot of benefits to this. And, you know, we have some recommendations for supporting not only current organic farmers, but increasing market access in this state by expanding opportunities for marketing, food hub collaboratives, access to processing, and adequate labor are some of the issues that the farmers have cited, and to ensure the continued and uninterrupted certification services for New Hampshire producers. And then the other issue is that regardless of how all this shakes out, farmers will see a significant increase in the certification fees that they have to pay. So having some sort of program that helps transition that cost would be wonderful. So we can go to the next slide, please. I'm just going to lightly touch on this issue here, but PFAS, I'm sure many of you have been following what has happened to ag land in the state of Maine, where it has been contaminated by PFAS. It is a huge risk to humans and has a variety of health implications that are quite severe. Here in the state, we have the issue in Merrimack where it was polluted by one of the chemical manufacturers. And so there is several bills in place, one that pursues a lawsuit, two that holds the polluting entity or other entities accountable, and the other removes the statute of limitations, which is currently 6 years on being able to pursue damages for victims who have been impacted. And in many cases, you might not even know the damages within that short time frame. So these are important pieces of legislation that are moving through, and there are many other bills as well that I'm not highlighting right now, but we are watching this closely, and also its implication on ag lands, which can have a devastating impact for farmers if their land becomes contaminated. Next slide, please. And let's see, I think there's one more. Oh, that's it. Okay, well, thank you. That's it.
Julie, did you want to touch briefly on farm to school, or?
No, I had the farm relief bill, and I think Rob did a good job outlining the needs of that, but we also are urging the passing of this bill. Farmers are on the front lines of climate change daily. They were there for us during COVID, when supply chains were disrupted, and investing in their businesses ensures our food security. And so these bills are important relief. NOFA New Hampshire has administered a relief fund, 30K, but as you saw with the figures Rob presented, it's a drop in the bucket. I know the Chester Conservation District also has a relief fund for the Monadnock region, but farmers really need more assistance. So I hope we could expand upon that. And then longer term, I'd just like to point out that, establishing permanent grant programs that help farmers prepare to mitigate and adapt to these climate impacts, particularly organic farming is a great tool and resource to do that. But the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Districts has been implementing the climate resilience grants, and making that program permanent with funding and support from the state would go a long way in ensuring our state's agricultural infrastructure. So I will, and then yes, farm to school. NOFA New Hampshire has been working with that bill for a while, and we adamantly support it. So yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. And your stories about the unintended consequences also just underscore the importance of having different kinds of expertise and different interests in the room early on in the process. And that's as we are now. So next, Stacy Purslow, taking us further on the evolution of the farm to school policies. Again, an example of perseverance and creativity.
Yes, thank you, UC and Julie. So I am Stacy Purslow with the New Hampshire Farm to School program. Farm to School, New Hampshire Farm to School is a statewide program. We support schools in helping them purchase local and regional food for their school meal programs, support school garden initiatives, develop curriculum and programs such as the New Hampshire Harvest of the Month program. Next slide. So as UC said, this is a third year trying to get an incentive bill passed for New Hampshire Farm to School. It's an incentive program that would incentivize schools to purchase local food. So using federal tax dollars that support the National School Lunch Program to leverage them to shift some of their purchasing to local, and then they would get a little bit of money back from the state based on those local and regional purchases. So this year, the last 2 years, it was just a statewide program, and we've scaled it back to be a pilot program. There seems to be more support for let's try this out first. So it's a pilot program this time. We would allow 10 schools or school districts to participate, so one from each county, hoping to get a diversity of urban and rural schools to participate. And they would get money back, to spend, $3 federal on local food, get $1 back up to a certain amount based on enrollment in the school or school district. And they would get, if they spend $6 federal dollars regionally, then they would get $1 back from the state, again, up to whatever the enrollment in the school is. So this time, the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture, thank you, has agreed to host the program. Requested funding would support a part-time program coordinator, the reimbursement itself, and some professional development for school service, specifically some culinary training to help them feel more comfortable using maybe whole fruits and vegetables versus sometimes they get in canned, frozen, and already cut. And that's not easily found for local foods. Schools can apply to participate. We'll be developing an RFP. Schools can apply. We'll form a committee of experts in the area to decide which schools will be chosen. It'll be a 2-year program. Eligible foods include dairy, fish, pork, beef, poultry, eggs, fruits, vegetables, cider, and maple syrup. Also allowed would be processed dairy, like yogurts and cheeses, minimally processed proteins like ground beef, minimally processed produce like broccoli florets or shredded carrots, We're not allowing fluid milk as part of the program, just because schools already purchase fluid milk, and it's all raised and produced here in New England anyway. So right now we have the bill sponsor, Elizabeth Simpson, who could not be here today, but we have 14 other sponsors for the bill, which is more than we've had in past years. And we have bipartisan support and support from both the House and the Senate, which is very exciting to me. So I'm feeling really hopeful this time around that we will be able to get this passed. So the timeline, the last couple of years, it was heard in committee in January. The committee voted on it in February. The last 2 years it went to the education committee. I don't, it may go there or it may go to the ag committee. I'm not 100% sure where the bill will land. So we have a lot of information on the NOFA New Hampshire website. Thank you, NOFA. And I just put the link in the chat where you can find more information about the bill, some messaging, sign-on letters, and we'll be adding a few more resources soon. So all the information you need to know about the Farm to School bill and action that you can take, you can find it on the NOFA site at that link I just popped in there.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Stacy, for your tireless support of bringing nutrition and connecting local farms to local schools. Our next speaker is Brody DeShays from New Hampshire Hunger Solutions, and closely connected to poverty among school-age kids and across our communities more broadly.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it's great to join everyone today. Again, my name is Brody DeShays. I'm the Communications and Policy Manager with New Hampshire Hunger Solutions. And this year we're going to be trying to introduce, we are introducing the 2024 Hunger-Free New Hampshire Act, which is going to be prime sponsored by Senator Becky Whitley, who we've worked closely with on food insecurity issues and access to food, and how it relates to our food system is by having more people being able to have the purchasing power and to access food in their communities. That's going to inject money directly into our agricultural sector, into our food system. And so it's going to help local producers, especially with programs like Double Up Food Bucks that can be utilized through SNAP and WIC. But some background is there are kind of several economic trends, including rising costs of goods, housing, and childcare that are straining household budgets in New Hampshire and throughout America. For many, it's increasingly difficult to meet basic needs. And this is happening all over America. And New Hampshire is no different. We're not immune to it. What is different in New Hampshire is that we have very little state revenue to support the public structures we rely upon. When it comes to hunger, we need to ensure that everyone is eligible, who is eligible for federal nutrition programs, SNAP, school and summer meals, is connected to those resources. These programs support the health and the well-being of many of us who might find ourselves in need at some point in our lives. To that end, we've created this comprehensive bill package to help remove barriers, streamline program administration, and increase participation in these critical nutrition support programs, and to connect people into the food system and to help them purchase the food that our wonderful producers on this call are growing right here in New Hampshire. So I'm going to go over some of the key aspects of this legislation briefly. First is we want to require schools with free and reduced percentages above 10% to offer breakfast at school, and for the state to help reimburse those startup costs. We want to incentivize the breakfast after the bell program in New Hampshire. So many school districts will start a program that where breakfast is provided during the school day, maybe part of class time while instruction's happening or separately. But the traditional school breakfast program where schools offer breakfast in the cafeteria before the start of the school day can miss many kids. Bus schedules and morning commutes mean most students are not in school always early enough to participate. In addition, school breakfast is often viewed as a program for kids that are more economically vulnerable, causing many low-income children to opt out of the program because of the associated stigma. So breakfast after the bell kind of makes it so that it's a little bit more equitable and is an evidence-based approach to reducing stigma and improving participation. in-school breakfast, which is extremely important for children and for their ability to grow and learn, and especially to set them up for success during the rest of the school day. We want to incentivize schools eligible to participate in the USDA community eligibility provision to offer that program. And the community eligibility provision allows high poverty schools to offer free meals to all students who choose to eat it. 90 schools in New Hampshire are now eligible for the community eligibility provision. And if all the eligible schools participated, it could possibly help feed 26,000 students, children in New Hampshire. In the bill, the state would help pay for the difference between the federal government reimbursements and the actual cost for feeding all children, so that so one, it wouldn't be an unfunded mandate, and two, the cost wouldn't be borne by the property taxpayers. We want to ensure that all children up to 185% of the federal poverty level can eat free lunch at school. Currently, families with incomes up to 130% of the federal poverty level are eligible for free lunch, and families with incomes between 130% and 185% are eligible for reduced price lunch. Essentially, we want to make it so then those students that are currently getting reduced price lunch with reimbursements at the federal rate for reduced price lunch, that those students are able to access a free meal, and that the state covers the difference between the federal government's reimbursement for the meal and the cost of the meal to the family. So this is going to help us help ensure that more students are able to participate in these programs and access meals in school, which, as we know, helps educational outcomes and helps the entire food system. We want to require an option for an online school meals application, so applying for the free and reduced price meals programs. So making it so that New Hampshire would create an online application system that schools could use, or purchase an online application system operated by a third party that several districts currently pay for. Currently, right now in New Hampshire, we estimate only about like 10 to 20 school districts actually utilize an online form for applying for free reduced price meals for their children. This would make it much easier for families, so they wouldn't have to, go to their schools, hunt down for a form, go to the SAU office, which could be a long drive depending on what area of the state you live in. This could make it so you could just log on to an application and fill out the information. We want to require that New Hampshire Department of Ed identify and approve summer meal sponsors and publicize summer meal sites sooner in the year, so by deadline May 15th, so then direct service providers can advertise that information to people utilizing their services, so people who struggle to access food outside of the school year will be able to access it. And we want to require the state to participate in summer EBT, which is a new federal program that provides resources to families and children who receive free reduced price school meals during the school year. The benefits are federal, and the state will bear about 50% of the administrative costs, which is the same way the SNAP program operates. And lastly, we want the state to implement the SNAP Elderly and Disabled Simplified Application Project, which is abbreviation is ESAP, and is a set of waivers allowed by the USDA that makes it easier for older adults and people with disabilities with fixed incomes to connect to SNAP. It streamlines the application, the recertification process, helping those age 60 and older or people with disabilities to benefit from SNAP. And other states have seen savings in state administrative costs because it requires fewer recertifications. And other states have also reported that it helped more food insecure older adults connect to the resources and the nutritional resources that they need. So that's kind of the not so brief overview of the legislation. We're really excited to be able to be a part of this work and this collective impact to help ensure that Granite Staters can access the nutrition that they need. Some of the actions that we need from supporters would be joining some of our coalition calls to receive regular updates to stay up to date with this legislation and all of our work, and also to participate in the advocacy opportunities that we'll have forthcoming, like action alerts, emails, letters to the editor, calling your state legislators, testifying in Concord if you're comfortable with that. And if you want to learn more about the legislation, want to talk more about it, want to figure out how you can get more involved, I'll put my email into the chat. But I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to share this exciting work that we're doing at New Hampshire Hunger Solutions with all of you on this call today.
Thank you, Brody. what a feat to develop the Omnibus Act. I hope that it moves forward as intended. Our final speaker is Rob Warner from the League of Conservation Voters. And before Rob gets started, I just want to appreciate all of our speakers for accommodating our strict time limits, and to flag to Roanne, there may be time for 1 or 2 questions for real-time discussion at the end. So think about those.
Good morning. Thanks for having such a great crowd. Over 100 people have joined us today, so it certainly is a testament to the interest around so many of these issues. My name is Rob Werner. I am the New Hampshire State Director for the League of Conservation Voters, LCV. LCV is a national organization. We've been around for over 50 years, in fact, 53 years, and LCV was one of the organizations that founded or established the first Earth Day in 1970, the year of our founding. And we work both nationally and here in New Hampshire with state legislators and our congressional delegation advocating for climate and clean energy solutions. We involve the community through many kinds of events and tabling at many festivals and things of that nature, and really out in the community. We have a robust team here in New Hampshire of 10 full-time staff and an office in Manchester and one in Portsmouth. So very active in the state and very pleased to be involved in this aspect of climate and agriculture, which is a very important aspect of our work moving forward. I do want to echo, before I start with some of these specific bills that we're interested in supporting, the farm to school legislation. It's a very important priority. It's not only going to promote public health in our school system, it promotes economic development and strengthens and adds to the resilience of our agricultural community in the state, which is essential, both from an agricultural point of view, an economic point of view, but also really from a cultural point of view, and what we want our state to be, and how we can really grow more of our food here. So that's all very important, and we will be advocating strongly at LCV and involving our members around the state on behalf of that legislation. We all know the impacts of climate change on our agricultural systems. We've seen rising temperatures, change of precipitation, extreme weather events, all having negative impacts on our agricultural resources. And we have an opportunity really to build resilience. And as Jussi had mentioned at the top, the EPA has provided the state of New Hampshire significant resources in the millions of dollars to develop a to really update our climate action plan, which was first established in 2009. And frankly, it really needs to be much more ambitious to match what's going on in our region in terms of the states around us really digging into climate action, clean energy development, reducing emissions, supporting agriculture, making agriculture more resilient, bringing agricultural resources and producers into really being part of the solution. So we have an opportunity to do that. In January and February, there will be a number of sessions, both online and in person, ability for you to really get involved in your voice and using your voice in terms of what we ought to be doing and the direction we ought to be taking in terms of a robust climate action plan for the state. I'll put that information into the chat. And we have both, as I said, both online and in person, I'm pleased to say, opportunities for people to be involved. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight specifically was this bill that Senator Waters is putting forward. There will be other co-sponsors as well, but this is establishing a state environmental adaptation, resilience, and innovation council. And what's great about this bill and approach is that it brings together so many aspects of our society to interact with this challenge that we face, and to be able to bring people together to provide specific strategies depending on the various areas, whether that's agriculture, as we're talking about today, public health impacts, ability to have a larger uptake of clean energy. And I really see this council as a complement to the continuing work we need to do with our climate action plan. And the important thing about the climate action plan and how this council can work together is that it's these monies that are coming from the EPA and allowing us to update our climate action plan. It's a very tight time frame because those that initial proposal needs to be put back into EPA's hands by March 1st. And that will unlock additional monies that will enable implementation of various programs and strategies and so forth. But this council, I think, is, as I said, a very good complement to that work. So I thank Senator Waters for bringing together this proposal and working with his colleagues to establish this council. Next
Rob, I'll
page,
note that
please.
Senator Waters is or has been on our call. He's still logged in. Senator, of course, please feel free to unmute and share your perspectives.
Yes, I did see that Senator Waters is with us. Thank you. So if you have anything to say about the bill as to what I've added to it, go ahead.
We can give him a moment.
Thanks so much, Rob.
Oh.
And I really appreciate your highlighting it. We got a lot of work to do to get this through. And I think I've had very good response from the commissioners I've been able to speak with about the need for doing this kind of planning, but also the need to do it together. That we really have to see what we can do to help New Hampshire people adjust to the environmental change that we know is coming. And it's going to need a lot of help. We got to do work on funding and organizing around it, but I think we have pretty good prospects. But again, thanks so much for everybody on the call for your interest.
Well, thanks so much. I'm glad you were able to chime in. That's perfect. A couple other points. Other states around us, as I said, they have very well-developed climate action plans, particularly Maine. I have to really put our hats off to Maine. They've done some really good work. And it's specific in terms of agricultural resources and making sure that agriculture is part of the solution in terms of developing policies around concurrent use of renewable energy. There's no reason why solar panels cannot coexist with agricultural resources, whether that's production of food and pollinator plants and so forth, which again are very important. So we've seen that around the country. We've seen some of it here in New England, but I would encourage us to remember that we can put forward these initiatives in a very cooperative way that is beneficial to both the agricultural community and developing the renewable resources that we really need. And Massachusetts also has developed some significant programs through their climate action plans and have really strengthened their agricultural systems as well. So again, it's very important for us to have a voice in this process of our developing our climate action plan. So please take advantage of that. Next slide, please. The next thing is, again, sort of related to bringing more voices into the process and establishing and encouraging folks to get involved and be part of the solution. Representative Matt Wilhelm is putting in a bill that he has introduced in the past, but hopefully this year it can get enacted, establishing a committee to study the civilian clean energy, community resilience, and conservation core. So this bill really would not immediately establish a climate core program in New Hampshire, but hopefully in the next session, not too long from now, we would be able to do that. Our neighbors in Maine do have a climate core program that's up and running, and they do have programs where they're working with agricultural communities in terms of providing resources to build resilience, and how is it that the state can be a cooperative partner with the agricultural community, both here and in the region, in terms of strengthening resilience, again, in the face of these challenges that we face in terms of rising temperatures and changes in precipitation and the extreme weather events, which are projected to become more intense. I think we all know that. So there's work to do. I hope that you'll take the opportunity not only to spread the word about the farm to school bill, Senator Waters' council bill, and really trying to involve young people and give them an opportunity to be an ever greater part of the solution through this sort of conservation core idea. So a lot of work to do. Thank you all for the many variety of things that we've talked about today, and how so much of it really fits together in the work that we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob, for bringing us up to that 30,000 foot level as well, about the interconnectivity of all these actions for good. I wanted to pass the mic to Roanne. Over these 8 years, you must have seen a number of bills and LSRs and ideas come and go under the theme of greater integration, again, between the regions and the particular disciplines or perspectives. Do you have a question that you think the speakers could respond to bring some of these broader themes together? All right, Roanne, we will have to come back to you, and I know that you're ready to close us out. with
No,
some-
I'm ready.
Oh,
I'm
there you
ready.
go.
I apologize.
All right.
I unmuted, it would help. I wanted to come back to a question that Jean Jonas from Hungry Bear Farm in our region posed way back during the agricultural land preservation program conversation. You know, he said that he was all very much in favor of the ALP and preserving current farmland, but what are we going to do to increase farmland in order to hit the 30 by 30 mark, which is where we're all, the goal is for the state. So I was wondering if there was anyone on the panel who would like to respond to Jean.
Well, I suppose I could jump in on that. I think the 30 by 30 goal is a very ambitious goal, and I think it's important to remember that that goal is for our region, New England wide. And so, you know, New Hampshire has our strengths in certain regards, certain aspects of agriculture and certain regions of New Hampshire, but you know, we have to look at agricultural resources and farmland across the whole region and play to that. So I wouldn't necessarily think about let's focus on the farmland we do have in New Hampshire and trying to protect that first. We're still losing it at a tremendously rapid rate, and until we can stabilize it, there are opportunities to break more land out of forests. Certainly, there are prime agricultural soils that are currently, you know, under trees right now, but it would take a lot of energy and expense, frankly, to bring that land back in. So my suggestion is to focus on the prime agricultural soils that are being used right now, but aren't currently protected and extremely vulnerable to development unless we do protect them.
Could you just introduce yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Jeremy Lougee.
Okay, I thought
yeah.
so. Thank you, Jeremy.
Can I add a comment to that, Roanne?
Of course.
This is Nicole Cardwell with the New Hampshire Food Alliance, and I just wanted to add that we are, with the support from the New Hampshire Department of Ag Markets and Food, spearheading the development of a New Hampshire food and agriculture strategic plan over the next year. And so I just put some information in the chat for you all, but I think if you are thinking about how do we protect more farmland? How do we expand farmland? And all the other ways to support our food system in New Hampshire, that's a good place for you to go and to get involved in. So wanted to provide that to the group as well.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and there's some really good suggestions in the chat too that I'll point to people.
And Colleen, maybe we can go through the chat and pull out any resources that would make sense to include in the follow-up as well. Just to underscore Jeremy's response, you know, we focus on New Hampshire, but there's as a region, we also have unique needs and abilities to advance, and directing us to Food Solutions New England, another program under the UNH Sustainability Institute, and following NOFA with the New England focus as well. When we can do more together, we go further. So we will bring this event to a close. I want to thank all of our speakers, Commissioner Shawn Jasper, Jeremy Lougee, Rob Johnson, Julie Davidson, Stacy Purslow, Brody DeShays, and Rob Warner. Roanne Tasoulis from the Monadnock Farm and Community Coalition. This is your brainchild. I hope we did you proud for this 8th session. And Nicole, I'm so glad you chimed in as director of the New Hampshire Food Alliance. You and Colleen are such an important part of our state infrastructure, compiling, disseminating information, collaborating, working behind the scenes. And Colleen, in particular, this event would not have been possible without your leadership. So thank you. I did want to remind folks or invite folks to join the Carsey School of Public Policy on January 10th for the next in our discussion series. The topic is cost of voting and the New Hampshire voting paradox. Many voters were surprised to hear that New Hampshire ranked 50th in the 2022 cost of voting index, reflecting the highest cost of voting in the country. We are also a state with one of the highest rates of voter turnout. So how could this be the case? We have the author of the national study and a director of New Hampshire Campaign for Voting Rights talking about who benefits, who is left out of New Hampshire elections, what can be done to improve voter access across all municipalities and life situations. I want to extend a thank you to all the farmers, fishers on the call, those in processing, other parts of the distribution chains, and the varied champions for local agriculture, land use planning, environmental conservation, food security, nutrition, farmers markets, what Carsey researchers call alternative food networks, along with CSAs, and just all of you that are working to make New Hampshire better in this regard. If you're not yet involved, get involved. Our legislature, especially the House, with its so many representatives, is accessible and responds powerfully to testimonials and personal stories, as Brody said, either written or in person. The public hearings will be scheduled early next year. Encourage you to get on the New Hampshire Food Alliance distribution list if you've not already. We all have a role in setting the rules and securing the funding for the agriculture ecosystem that we want to live in. Passing the mic to Roanne to close us out.
Yeah, thank you, UC. I mean, I'm just so grateful for your expertise as a moderator and facilitator. And again, Colleen Stewart, this is the A team, and I'm so grateful for both of your participation and the leadership of Nicole Cardwell. Everyone will be receiving the contact information for all the speakers and organizers today, as well as the slide deck and some information on the 2023 Farm Bill, including the differences between the 2018 to 2023 and the policy priorities of national, regional, and state agricultural policy organizations. So keep your eyes open, get involved, and let's keep going in the right direction for a robust farm future for all of us to enjoy. Thank you so much for coming today.